Hello, I'm Jeremy, and welcome to another episode of Jeremy U's Reviews, where mistreated movies get a second chance. I've seen a lot of stuff since I've been back at college, so now it's time to catalog them in a mini review. Let's-a go!
There's three of us, look closely you will see. There's three of us, just three of us, there's him and you and me.
I am a massive Don't Hug Me, I'm Scared fan. The characters are likable and fun, the songs are incredibly catchy and enjoyable, the comedy's hilarious, and every inch of the show is filled with so much detail, and the horror is beautifully messed up. And after years of waiting, we've gotten 6 new 23-minute Don't Hug Me, I'm Scared episodes, which are all absolutely incredible. Starting off, the show looks amazing. While the original web series did look incredible, you can clearly see how the new episodes benefited from the increased budget. The colors really pop, and you can really feel the texture of each detail. The characters are also fantastic. Not only do Red Guy, Yellow Guy, and Duck, and yes, those are their names, retain their likability and unique traits, but their relationship is a lot more complex than it was in the original. One of the only criticisms I had towards the original web series was how, with the exception of the first Kickstarter video and bits of episode 3, Red, Yellow, and Duck never really felt like they had an actual relationship and felt more like acquaintances than anything else. But in the new series, the relationship feels a lot more in-depth. They have a very bizarre friendship where while they don't exactly love each other, they still enjoy being in each other's company. It's a very interesting dynamic that really works well with the crazy unpredictableness of the world around them. But they're also fantastic on their own. Yellow Guy's naivete and innocence makes for some funny and messed up moments. Duck's cranky irritability makes him pretty entertaining and relatable. And Red Guy's just the actual best, with his sarcastic, deadpan demeanor always getting a laugh. An absolutely fantastic trio. And the new teachers are all great. I'm not going to go too in-depth on them as I don't want to spoil the show for those who haven't watched it, but they're incredibly funny, perfectly fit the spirit of DHMIS, and have some fun interactions with the trio. The humor is also awesome. While the original series was certainly funny, this new series is freaking hilarious. There are so many genuinely hilarious jokes, from the personalities of the trio bouncing off the other characters and each other, to really funny lines, to absurd moments, to some pretty biting and hilarious commentary. It really does a good job of taking what made the original series' comedy work and expand on it to make the new series a laugh riot. Finally, the parts that most people think of when they think of Don't Hug Me, I'm Scared, the songs and the horror. The songs are pretty good. They're very memorable, fun, catchy, and capture the spirit of DHMIS well. And the horror is really well implemented. It doesn't pull any punches, is very weird and surreal, and it's perfectly accessible as long as you're not too squeamish. The Don't Hug Me, I'm Scared TV series is everything I wanted and more. Everything awesome about the original series is amped up to an amazing degree. The comedy, the characters, the horror, the songs, it's all just so good. I cannot recommend this amazing series enough, and if you haven't seen the original web series, also give that a watch. Becky Sloan and Joseph Pelling, you two are absolute goats, and I can't wait to see what you create next.
Hobnobbling with the goblin, the goblin girl from the mystery world.
The Poloni Show Halloween special is an absolutely fantastic movie. Like Scare Package, it's a comedic horror anthology, but where Scare Package is live action, Poloni is animated, making it free to experiment in all sorts of mediums and be as crazy as it wants. Let's break down each short one by one. First up, the framing device. See, these shorts are tied together with a host segment from the titular Polonis, Leroy, Reggie, and Charouse. I like these segments. Leroy, Reggie, and Charus are fun characters and enjoyable hosts, and their segment is very funny, insane, clever, and creepy, and acts as a really good wraparound for the rest of the shorts. Next, we have the first official short, Banana Party. This short is a perfect introduction for the insanity that is this movie. Basically, a guy feels rejected because he picked a banana Halloween costume, and so isn't really getting any action from girls. But then a girl wearing another banana costume comes and takes him to a party with other banana people, and insanity ensues. I'm not going to spoil this segment at all, but my god does it get disturbing and crazy. A fantastic introduction. Moving on, we have the only live-action short, Plopsy and Friends. This short is awesome. It does a great job parodying children's shows, the production design is awesome, the humor is hilarious, and Plopsy himself is a very entertaining character. Also, talented comedic duo Sid and Olivia are in the sketch as well, and they're very funny. A solidly entertaining children's show parody. Next, there's Camp Deathlake. It's okay. The animation is great, and there's an adorable charm, but once you get where the short is going, you can immediately tell how it's going to end. Decent short, but not as good as the previous two. The Dresden is freaking hilarious. Everything about this short is so enjoyably random and crazy, not to mention how it's Gilbert Gottfried's final film role. What a way to go out. Bet It Was Becca is also really good. The animation is nice, the concept is creepy, and the ending twist is pretty funny. Also, at the beginning of the short, a bit of audio plays, which I swear is an instrumental version of Original by Uncle Adams. Like, I can't prove it because I can't really get access to the short, but just watch it and you'll see. Mega Hex, Devil's Night, is the only segment that isn't original, as it's based on Simon Hanselman's comic series Mega Hex. I've never read Mega Hex, but after this segment, I might check it out because I really liked MDN. The animation, while not amazing, has a nice charm to it. The characters are fun, the jokes are good, and the plot is pretty enjoyable. Although Owl without his beak is pure nightmare fuel, which, I mean, is the point, but still, jeez. You can immediately tell that Right Behind You Ton was made by Joel Haver, as it has his fingerprints all over it. And since I love Joel Haver, I like this too. The concept of a mayor outlawing every single scary thing in his city, to the point where he replaces Halloween with Mayor Day, a holiday where everyone dresses up as the mayor, is a really fun concept. And combining it with Joel Haver's unique art style and comedy makes it an absolute highlight. Also, the twist is legit hilarious. Slaughter Cafe is a really cool segment. It's very visually distinct. The idea of a cannibal restaurant is pretty cool and creepy. The humor is both dark and funny, and I like the infomercial charm it has. Good segment. The Creek Down the Street is by far the weakest segment. It has a very off-the-cuff, podcast-like charm, but it barely has anything to do with Halloween and doesn't amount to much. S-Word Beetlejuice is also pretty weak. While it does have a little more to do with Halloween than The Creek Down the Street, and the Beetlejuice parody character is decently funny, it feels more like a half-baked idea rather than a full bit. And I think it would have been funny if it was revealed what exactly the word was that made all those people so upset. I have mixed feelings on the Killer Bathtub. On the one hand, the animation is beautifully stylized, and it has some funny moments. But on the other hand, it's an absolute mess. Like the Dresden, Killer Bathtub tries to be as random as possible, but where the Dresden had a manageable pace to keep the randomness in line, Killer Bathtub just goes so fast and loose that I can't even comprehend what just happened. While an Alien Halloween claymation isn't as funny as some of the other segments, it's really freaking awesome. The claymation is beautifully stylized, the action is cool, there is so much excitement, and I love how simultaneously chill and awesome the dad character is. And finally, we have the last segment, Slashtronaut. Like how Banana Party was a great segment to start the special, Slashtronaut is a great segment to end the special. The way this short parodies slasher film elements are pretty clever. The main kid characters are pretty fun. The titular Slashtronaut is really menacing and unique, and these deaths are freaking brutal. Although the G-training machine death does raise the question of how that thing is still running considering how worn down and abandoned the haunted spaceship is, but that's a minor nitpick. A great segment to end a great movie. The Poloni Show Halloween special is honestly fantastic. While Creek Down the Street and S-Word Beetlejuice are kinda weak, and the Killer Bathtub is a mixed bag, every other short is absolutely amazing. It's an incredibly fun, crazy, creative, and enjoyable Halloween special. And even though I understand why, given the massive amount of Hulu references on the framing device, the fact that the Poloni Show Halloween special is a mere Hulu exclusive is an actual crime. I mean, that's a bit of a hyperbole, but you know what I mean. If you have Hulu, watch this movie. You will not regret it. An absolutely phenomenal film, and major props to everyone who worked on it. I've seen a lot of praise for Dead End Paranormal Park. And after watching it, yeah, it's a really good show. While not my favorite Netflix series, DEPP has a lot of charm, humor, and creativity. Let's start with the characters. The characters in the show are genuinely very charming and likable. Barney is a perfect example of trans representation, not only being very likable, funny, and relatable, but portraying trans struggles in a way that's realistic, understandable, and not alienating. Norma is a pretty enjoyable contrast to Barney, being a lot more adventurous and knowledgeable about the park, while still being nervous in some areas. Pugsley is very adorable and funny. Courtney is absolutely hilarious, as she has some great lines and an enjoyable charm. And the other characters, while not incredibly memorable, do add a lot to the show in various ways. The animation is also really good. It manages to have a familiar vibe, yet still feels unique. The colors are appropriately balanced, and it captures the emotions and horror aspects well. Pretty good animation. As for the jokes, while DEPP isn't as funny as something like Inside Job or I Think You Should Leave, it still has some pretty funny moments. There are some funny lines, especially from Courtney and Pugsley, clever takes on horror tropes, and enjoyable character dynamics playing off each other. It's very fun humor that adds to the charm of the show. Finally, there's the horror. Unlike DHMIS and Poloni, Dead End Paranormal Park is aimed at a much younger audience and is a bit more restrained than those two. But despite that, the horror is still pretty effective. It's very scary, creative, and unique enough to make a solid impression. Neat stuff. Dead End Paranormal Park is a fantastic show. While I wouldn't call it my favorite Netflix show, it is still a very enjoyable series, with likable characters, fun humor, good representation, cool horror, and a really enjoyable charm. If you like kids' horror shows or want some good LGBTQ representation, check out DEPP. And for those wondering, at the time of this recording, I have not seen Season 2. But if it's anything like Season 1, I'm sure I'll be in for a good time.
Morbius, I got that acrimonious odious. Cause the bats are copious, my blood flows harmonious. Bow to act felonious. You know they're hating us, and you're getting treasonous.
I did it. I watched the most infamous movie of 2022, Morbius. My thoughts? This thing is a massive mixed bag. Let's start with the good parts. The acting is honestly really good. While none of these actors are Oscar-worthy, each actor genuinely does the best with the material that they're given, and give an atmospheric order to their performances. I especially like Matt Smith as Milo and Jared Leto as the title character, Dr. Michael Morbius. Both actors do really well, having a lot of chemistry and charisma, and they both give their characters a unique charm, with Smith giving Milo a fun, sarcastic vibe, and Jared giving Michael a more serious, studious vibe. And I know I'm probably going to get flack for praising Jared Leto, but considering Jared Leto also did this...
You helped me by erasing my mind what you hated memories I had.
A performance this good is a major step up. I also like the film's atmosphere. Morbius is clearly influenced by stories of men making monsters, a la Frankenstein and The Strange Case of Jekyll and Hyde, with Michael trying to use vampire bats to find a cure for his blood illness, but ending up turning into a monster himself, and this translates very well into the film's atmosphere. It feels uniquely eerie and intriguing in a way that really grabs the audience, yet still contains a hint of levity. It's a very interesting style that makes Morbius enjoyably stand out. And that uniqueness is a lot of what makes Morbius such an enjoyable film. In a sea of MCU nonsense that's so samey and formulaic, a film as unapologetically insane and crazy as Morbius is downright refreshing. It's a film that both takes itself seriously and doesn't take itself seriously at the same time, and that internal contrast is what makes Morbius such a fascinating cinematic oddity. There are also some legit, really good horror shots. For all of Morbius' faults, it is able to capture fright and suspense well. The scene where Morbius attacks that nurse in the empty hallway was especially a really good scene. But despite all of that, there are some problems with Morbius that make me understand why it got so much flack. For one, the effects are garbage. Like, they're not the worst effects I've ever seen, but for a film made in 2022, they look absolutely pathetic. Morbius and Milo as vampires look unbelievably fakey, and the whooshes that accompany their fighting and movements look so tacky and artificial. It's definitely enjoyable, but it's still really distracting and hinders the film greatly. On top of that, the only characters in this film that feel like they have any depth are Michael and Milo. Every other character is just a generic archetype. The bullies that bully Mike and Milo when they were young are just generic bullies. Michael's colleague is Michael's colleague. The serious FBI agent and wisecracking FBI agent are the serious FBI agent and wisecracking FBI agent, and so on and so forth. The only minor exception is the wisecracking FBI agent, Alberto Rodriguez, as some of his lines are so dumb that they get a bit of a chuckle. But other than that, these are blank slates with basic character traits. Speaking of which, the writing. Like the rest of the film, Morbius' writing is incredibly mixed in terms of quality. While a lot of the lines in the film are pretty solid, either effectively communicating a serious or humorous tone, and the fact that the doctor actually realized that young Morbius fixing a machine through simple means is abnormal and this kid might be a genius, as opposed to the idiot teacher from Fan Forstick who saw young Reed blow up a basketball hoop with his transporter and was like, "This is magic, you're disqualified." It's honestly freaking refreshing. There are some pretty silly and cliche lines, and the writing can't really settle on what consistent tone it wants to set. Not bad writing, but far from perfect. So, yeah, I feel very conflicted about Morbius. On the one hand, it does have a lot of faults. The writing is hit or miss. Most of the characters don't have depth, and the effects are laughable. But at the same time, Morbius has this bizarre and interesting charm that makes it very hard to hate. There's a reason that the internet had such a unanimous meme reaction to Morbius, and I think it has to do with how unique it is in terms of the bad film landscape. I get why certain people think that Morbius is just plain awful, but in my opinion, there's just something about Morbius that makes it stand out from typical MCU fodder for both the right and wrong reasons. I know I might get some flack for giving Morbius an unironically semi-positive review, but I'll take the interestingly bad and cool Morbius over the Descendants ripoffery that is Monster High the movie, the tropey gaslighting mess that is Purple Hearts, and the idiotic, smug, hate-filled piece of garbage that is My Son Hunter, which can actually die in a fire. So, yeah, Morbius is a guilty pleasure, but a pleasure nonetheless. If you're curious about the Morbius hype, give it a watch. And also, the part where Morbius said it's Morbin time and morbed all over the bad guys was indeed very epic.
City of 1,000 dreams.
So much fun is bursting at the seams.
Fish and chips of world renown.
your archetypal seaside town.
While I'm not super familiar with the work of British comedian Harry Hill, his 2013 motion picture captured my attention. And after watching it, the Harry Hill movie is an absolute trip. It's basically cinematic Mad Libs, with the plot being Harry Hill playing a fictitious version of himself, and his Nan, played by Julie Walter, taking Harry's sick hamster Abu, voiced by Johnny Vegas, to Blackpool, while Harry's evil twin brother Otto, played by Matt Lucas, is trying to steal Abu in order to turn him into a model figurine. And that's not even the weirdest part of the film. If you like your films full of big-lipped alligator moments, the Harry Hill movie is for you, as holy friggin' cow is there so much insanity. The film opens with Harry stopping a bank robber and helping birth a baby, both while riding his scooter, and continues with Harry entering warfare with some chickens, meeting a society of shell people and falling in love with the Shell King's daughter Michelle, because what else would her name be? Entering a nuclear facility and being oblivious to Abu growing in size and doing a Godzilla, and staying at a hotel with English pop rock band The Magic Numbers. I am not making any of this up. All of that happens in the movie. The characters are also fun. Harry Hill, both the character and the actor playing him, are very enjoyable. Hill's goofy and enjoyable charisma really makes him a likable and charming character, with his enjoyable naivete and optimism leading to some very funny moments. He's not a terribly complex character, but he's not really meant to be. Hill is just a simple, fun doofus that acts as a good protagonist to his movie. Harry's Nan is also pretty funny. Julie Walters does a really good job playing this cantankerous but kind-hearted old woman, and she has really good chemistry with Harry as well as some hilarious lines. Like her grandson, Nan isn't an amazingly complex character, but she has some very entertaining moments and is given a great performance by Julie Walter. Solid character all around. Abu is also hilarious. The film follows Madagascar rules where, while we can understand Abu, none of the other humans can. This makes for some really funny moments, as Abu is pretty much the smartest character in the film. And whenever he tries to get a word in, Harry and his Nan misunderstand what he's trying to say and end up getting duped with tricks Abu can see from a mile away. On top of that, the puppet work on him is really good. You can tell that it's not an actual hamster, but his movements and body language are relatively convincing enough for the audience to believe that he's an actual character. It's not Jim Henson levels, but it's pretty good nonetheless. And the effects on Abu when he turns into Hamsterzilla are both enjoyably campy and solidly effective. Abu is a really entertaining and enjoyable character that contrasts perfectly with the silliness of the movie, and is given a solid performance from Johnny Vegas. Rounding out the cast, we have Harry's evil twin brother, Otto. Otto is the perfect villain for this kind of film. He's the perfect balance of comedic and threatening, having some pretty funny moments, especially with his henchmen, Ed and Kisco, who both have really funny moments, but still being threatening enough to work as a villain. Matt gives an enjoyably over-the-top yet menacing performance that communicates Otto's villainy while still giving the character a fun edge that fits the vibe of the movie. A pretty entertaining antagonist for a pretty entertaining movie. And then we have the actual humor. This film is legit hilarious. The Harry Hill movie has a very goofy and silly sense of humor, from funny lines to big-lipped alligator moments to Harry and Nan misunderstanding Abu to clever character dynamics to incredibly clever meta-comedy. It's definitely not comedy for everyone, but if you like that kind of humor, you'll have a great time. The Harry Hill movie is an enjoyably surreal British treat. The plot is ridiculous, the characters are likable, the humor is fun, and it's an incredibly manic and enjoyably good time. I could definitely see someone not vibing with this film's insanity, but if you like crazy nonsense or need something to turn your brain off to, the Harry Hill movie is a good film to check out. Good job, Harry and crew. I'll definitely check out more from Harry Hill, and thanks to Clank Zoka for introducing me to this film. Between Everything Everywhere and Marcel the Shell, A24 have been hitting it out of the park. So I was very excited to see whether Bodies, Bodies, Bodies would keep up that hot streak. And this film is really weird. By far the best thing about Bodies, Bodies, Bodies is how unique it is. A24 films tend to be really out of the box, and this one's no exception. The film has an incredibly unique, bizarre feel that I've never seen in any other movie. Not to mention, I never thought I'd hear a Tyga song in an A24 film. It doesn't fully pan out, as I'll explain later, but for the most part, I do admire how unique Bodies, Bodies, Bodies is. I also like how suspenseful the film is. Bodies, Bodies, Bodies is one of the most stressful films I've ever seen, but I mean that in a good way. There is so much insanity, betrayal, frights, distrust, and energy going on that it's impossible to not be glued to the screen waiting to see what happens next. And the score is freaking great. The film is full of so many expressive, unique, and cool tracks, from bangers like Hot Girl and 212 to atmospheric vibes like Jealousy and To Light and Who Killer. It's a very versatile soundtrack that really makes the film pop. And now for the stuff I was mixed on, which unfortunately is the most important part, the characters and humor. While I didn't hate any of the characters in this movie, I really only liked 4 characters. David, Greg, Abby, and B. David I mainly liked because Pete Davidson was playing him, and I like Pete Davidson. Greg was easily the best character, with his chill, enjoyable vibe and likable demeanor. Abby had some pretty funny lines, and B had a lot of aspects to her that made her really interesting. Every other character was either okay, like Sophie, or insanely forgettable, like Jordan. And that mixed bag vibe translates to the humor as well. While none of it was unfunny, at least not as much as something like Bucky Larson Born to Be a Star, the humor felt very inconsistent. For every genuinely funny moment, there was a moment where I was like, was that supposed to be funny? Again, I wouldn't call the bad jokes unfunny per se. I just don't think that it clicked with me as much as it did for the other people I watched it with. And then we have the stuff I didn't like, the plotting and awkwardness. This film's plot takes forever to start. From the moment we get to David's family's mansion to the moment David gets murdered, absolutely nothing happens. It's just the main characters just hanging out and doing random stuff for hours and hours and hours on end. Now, I don't have a problem with this on principle. We need some lighthearted moments to relax and get to know the characters before the plot goes down, and these scenes are pretty fun and charming. Also, Greg's fake-out death was legit really well done. But my problem is that they do it for way too long. It feels like they didn't have enough material for a full-length movie, so they just put some scenes of the main characters hanging out to pad the runtime until the plot got underway. It got resolved once the plot started, but it still really bugged me. As for the awkwardness, various parts of this film feel really uncomfortable in a bad way. So much of Bodies, Bodies, Bodies feels like you just walked into an awkward argument, but you don't want to leave because you don't want to look bad. Like, it felt like half of these scenes should have the instrumental to We Cry Together by Kendrick Lamar playing within them. I suppose that's the point, but it just didn't really work for me. So yeah, like Morbius, Bodies, Bodies, Bodies is an absolute mixed bag of a film. There is some stuff I liked, the score is solid, it's never boring, and it's very ambitious and unique. But the characters and humor are a mixed bag, the plotting is a mess, and it's so awkward. This is definitely a love it or hate it type of film, as the stuff that'll make some people fall in love with BBB will annoy the piss out of others. But I honestly stand as the middle child and say that BBB is okay with a few flaws. I am definitely glad I saw Bodies, 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 as it was an enjoyable, unique experience. And I can definitely see it clicking with others more than me, even though I did like it. So yeah, check it out. It's a mixed bag, but one that's more good than bad. Also, the ending twist is legit hilarious. Rob Zombie's The Munsters is an imperfect but enjoyably campy film that's downright refreshing in a year where every modern film is trying so hard to be dark and overly serious. A lot of people, both Munsters fans and non-Munsters fans, really hate this film, and while I get why, I thoroughly enjoyed myself. But before I state why, let me address 2 points. 1. This film pales in comparison to the original 1960s sitcom. The original Munsters show is absolutely fantastic. And while the movie does often miss the point of the show and is nowhere near as awesome, I still liked it in spite of that. And secondly, I am in no way defending this film because it's a kids' movie. I despise the "it's just for kids" argument for various reasons, such as how hypocritical it is and how it devalues art. I 100% agree that kids deserve to have quality content. I just really enjoy this campy movie. With that out of the way, here's why I like Rob Zombie's Munster movie. Starting off, it's unapologetically campy. I have a very high camp tolerance. I unironically love the 60s Batman show, the 1970s Shazam, the 1975 Superman musical. I even have a bit of a soft spot for Batman and Robin.
7 million. Never leave the cave without it.
A bit. And Rob Zombie's Munsters fills that exact same niche for me. Everything from the color palette to the dialogue to the set pieces just screams, yeah, I'm a campy piece of cheese. What are you going to do about it? And I 100% admire and enjoy that. The characters are also really good. A lot of people really hate how Jeff Daniel Phillips and Sheri Moon Zombie portray Herman and Lily, but I personally enjoy their portrayal. Sheri does okay as Lily, nothing amazing, but nowhere near the worst performance I've ever seen. And while Jeff is nowhere near as good as Fred Gwynn, I really like his take on Herman Munster. Jeff's Herman is a very jokey and silly individual, and while I could understand him getting on someone's nerves, I really enjoyed how goofy and silly the character was, and he had some great lines to boot. On top of that, Lily and Herman have a great romance. See, Rob Zombie's Munsters is a prequel to the original sitcom that details how Lily and Herman first met. As such, it focuses a lot more on how they fell in love with each other, and it's done very well, IMO. It's the perfect mix of cheesy and adorable with some pretty goofy moments and an enjoyable sweetness. Sure, there's no real reason for why they fall in love with each other, but every romance needs one. It's just a cute romance. Also, Grandpa Munster is fantastic in this movie. Daniel Roebuck does a phenomenal job capturing Grandpa, getting his mannerisms and dialogue down to a T, while still giving his own flair to the character. He has some genuinely funny moments and lines, and I like how his dynamic with Herman is kind of the opposite of the dynamic from the show. So a really cool portrayal of a really cool character. Lester, Lily's brother, and Floop, the assistant to the man who created Herman, are also great characters. Lester has an enjoyably sleazy charm to him, and Floop has some really clever and funny lines and an enjoyably chill attitude. These two are great characters that make a good movie even better. The humor is also really good in my opinion. I can definitely see how someone might look at the humor of Munsters 2022 and say, this is too corny and cheap. But as someone who loves movies like Good Burger and Police Academy that are as unapologetically ridiculous and silly as possible, this humor 100% appeals to my sensibilities. From funny lines to goofy puns to hammy acting to enjoyably absurd moments to enjoyable camp. There's just so much bizarre goofiness on display that I really love. Again, I can definitely see why some people would be turned off, but I friggin' love it. Finally, we have how The Munsters 2022 compares to its original counterpart. One of the main complaints of this film is how it compares with the original sitcom, with the 2022 film not understanding the original tone and going against the friendly attitude of the original characters. And while that's a pretty valid and understandable criticism, I honestly don't mind it. This is a different interpretation of the Munsters, and while not all of it works, it balances out to an enjoyable experience overall, at least in my book. I definitely agree that it could be a lot stronger, but as is, it doesn't really get in the way of the viewing experience. Overall, Rob Zombie's Monsters is an incredibly flawed film that I absolutely love. Like Bodies, 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 it's a love it or hate it type of film. But where the love-hate elements of BBB kind of balanced out for me, the love-hate elements of Rob Zombie's Monsters are really connected with me and made me enjoy the film. The comedy's fun, the characters are enjoyable, the acting is solid, and like the Cuphead show, it's great for when you've had a rough day and want something to relax and have fun too. I don't know if you'll like this film if you're a fan of the original Monsters sitcom, but if you like silly and campy films, Monsters 2022 is a good movie to check out. I never thought I'd say this, but good job, Rob Zombie. No, this has nothing to do with the lovable big red dog. This Clifford is a 1994 Martin Short comedy that's essentially a cross between Problem Child and What About Bob? And dear God, is it hilarious. Let's start with the titular Clifford, played by Short. Now, Martin Short is an alright comedian. I don't love him as much as, say, John Candy or Leslie Nielsen, but he does have a likable charm and can be good in the right role. And to say that Clifford is the right role is a massive understatement, because he owns this role so well. True, you can immediately tell that Clifford isn't an actual child, but A, it adds to the comedy of the character, and B, Short does a really good job of capturing Clifford's naive and psychotic tendencies. He really reaches the perfect balance between adorable and psychotic, making the role his own in a fantastic way. I especially love the psychotic grin he gives Clifford. It really captures the essence of his character. And the character of Clifford himself is freaking hilarious. Where Junior is a good-natured kid deep down that mainly acts out due to how people perceive him, and Mikey is just a straight-up psychopath, Clifford is somewhere in between. Well, most of the time, Clifford feels like a naive little boy with a simplistic view of the world and an obsession with dinosaurs, to the point where he carries around and talks to a toy dinosaur that he named Stefan. His naivete blinds him to the idea of right and wrong, and that just because he wants something, that doesn't mean he's automatically going to get it, resulting in him doing stuff ranging from as small as bringing attention to the wig his Uncle Martin's boss, played by Dabney Coleman, wears, to as big as hijacking a plane and causing it to crash into Los Angeles just so he can get to Dinosaur World. And when Martin gets on Clifford's bad side by breaking his promise to take Clifford to Dinosaur World, Clifford's actions become completely psychotic, ranging from small things like replacing Martin's Bloody Mary with hot sauce to literally manipulating recorded footage to make it sound like Martin is carrying out a bomb threat. No, I'm not kidding, that happens. It's honestly insane the lengths that Clifford goes to, and that, combined with the inherent absurdity of the character, makes him friggin' hilarious. Overall, Clifford is an awesome character who's incredibly funny, eccentric, insane, and played phenomenally by Martin Short. I can definitely see how someone might get irritated with him, but I think he's friggin' hilarious. An absolutely fantastic character. Also, the film has a really interesting framing device, with a grown-up Clifford who's become a more eloquent and mature priest retelling the story to a boy named Roger in order to help him find the right path. It's a very cool framing device that shows an interesting contrast between young and old Clifford, and the payoff is incredibly sweet. Moving on, we have Clifford's Uncle Martin, played by Charles Grodin, who also played Harrison in Heart and Souls. Like Short, Grodin is phenomenal in this movie. I personally think Charles Grodin is a very underrated character actor, with a lot of charisma and charm, and that is 100% demonstrated in his role as Uncle Martin. Martin starts out as a fairly calm and rational person, who starts out acting kind and friendly towards Clifford. But as the film goes on and Clifford's antics get under Martin's skin, the dude becomes absolutely insane. Like how Short captures Clifford's absurdism and eccentricities very well, Grodin captures Martin's anger and frustration very well. The dude has multiple impassioned freakouts about Clifford, and Charles sells them like he's selling a high-end Lamborghini. And the film makes sure to not let us feel too bad for Martin, not only because none of Clifford's antics harm Martin physically, but because Martin isn't entirely good himself. He's mainly using Clifford as a way to prove to his girlfriend Sarah Davis that he can handle kids, because she doesn't stand how ambivalent he is towards children. And while Martin's reactions are understandable at the first, by the end of the film he becomes a legit psychopath. Watching Martin's journey into madness is as hilarious as it is terrifying and really adds to his character. Overall, Uncle Martin is an absolutely great character who makes a great foil for Clifford. He's funny, enjoyable, played fantastically by Charles Grodin, and just the right amount of over the top. An absolutely great character. Finally, there's Sarah Davis. She's okay. While not as great as Clifford or Martin, Sarah is still a likable character. Mary Steenburgen gives a solid performance. Her relationship with Martin goes through enjoyable ups and downs, and she has some pretty enjoyable moments. Not an amazing character, but still really good nonetheless. Also, there's Clifford's dad / Martin's brother, Julian. He's not that important, and he actually disappears from the plot early on, but like Grodin, Richard Kind is phenomenal in this role. He may be on screen for a short time, but Kind makes the most of it and really communicates with his rage effectively and humorously. Another awesome character. And then we have the humor. Clifford is friggin' hilarious. There are so many funny moments in this movie. The comedy in Clifford is the perfect mix of silly, mean, and surreal, with so many funny moments and scenes, from Clifford's eccentricities, to funny lines, to bizarre moments, to an enjoyable mean streak, and so much more. It may not click for everyone, but this comedy is absolutely fantastic and makes a great film even better. Finally, we have the sweetness at Clifford's core. On face value, Clifford seems like a very mean film, and for the most part, it is. But if you look below the surface, you'll see that Clifford has a very sweet center. Going back to the framing device from earlier, similar to how Father Clifford is telling Roger the story of his past in hopes it will become better, the film itself is telling us the story in order to show us how to become a better person. Clifford the film shows us how acting like Clifford the character will at the end of the day make us feel hateful and lose sight of what's really important, and culminating in an incredibly adorable and sweet ending. It's nothing groundbreaking, but it really elevates Clifford, making it transcend its greatness even further. While Clifford didn't do well financially, the film got a cult following over the years, which is 100% deserved, as it's a great movie. The characters are fun, the comedy is hilarious, the acting is incredible, and it has an enjoyable and good-intentioned mean streak. It's definitely not a film for everyone, but if you like Martin Short, mean-spirited comedies, have an open mind, or want something new, I can't recommend Clifford enough. An absolutely fantastic film that deserves a lot more love.
Oh, no, not the beast! Not the beast! Ah! Open my eyes! Eyes!
Nicolas Cage is an absolutely fantastic actor. When he's good, he's really good, but when he's bad, he's downright amazing. And The Unbearable Weight of Massive Talent is a film that does a great job demonstrating Cage's awesomeness. Let's start with the meta aspect. Unbearable Weight is a very referential of Nick's various film roles, from his serious stuff to his silly stuff. And it's pretty well handled for the most part. None of the references feel forced or fan-baity, and they make sure to cover every type of film Nick Cage has been in, even referencing the Wicker Man remake. And while I've heard some people say that the film could have gone farther, I don't really know if it should have. Could the film have gotten more meta? Yeah, but I think the film does a decent job as is, and the American Horror Stories episode Game Over and the finale of She-Hulk Attorney at Law prove that there's such a thing as being too meta. The characters are also great, with the best easily being Cage and Javi. Like the Harry Hill movie, Nick Cage is playing a fictional version of himself. And like in the Harry Hill movie, Cage does a good job. He reaches the perfect balance of serious and silly, really making the character feel like the Cage we know and love, without being an outright parody. He has some funny moments, is a solid character for the film to focus on, and has a phenomenal bromance with Javi, who I'll talk about later. And he also talks to an imaginary version of himself named Nikki that's more emblematic of the classic over-the-top Cage, which shows an interesting concept between the movie's Cage and the perception of Cage. Overall, movie Nick Cage is a really cool character who goes through a very interesting arc, perfectly complements the movie's tone and gives us some classic Nick Cagey goodness. As for Javi, he's also fantastic. While I haven't seen every film he's in, Pedro Pascal is an actor that I really like, as he has a likable charisma and a very warm charm, both of which he demonstrates perfectly in the role of Javi. Javi is a billionaire playboy, essentially a Nicolas Cage fanboy who has as much of a passion for film as the Cage Man himself. The scenes between Cage and Javi are particular highlights of Unbearable Weight, as Cage and Pascal have fantastic chemistry, being incredibly sweet but not to the point of schmaltz or obnoxiousness, and their crazy eccentricities and love of films both make for some genuinely fun and enjoyable scenes. I especially love the Paddington 2 scene. That one is both incredibly funny and emotional. And Javi is also a great character on his own. In addition to Pedro giving a fantastic performance, the character of Javi is very lovable and sweet, with an infectious determination and an enjoyable passion that really makes him a cool character. And seeing Javi and Cage's bromance go through ups and downs is very interesting to watch, and really makes the film stand out. Overall, both Cage and Javi are very entertaining characters that work well off each other, and really make the film enjoyable. The CIA agents, Vivian and Martin, are also pretty fun. They're both solid characters that act as an enjoyable contrast to Cage's craziness. And the bad guys are also great, perfectly matching the comedic tone for the film, but still being menacing. Overall, while most of these characters aren't amazing, they're still pretty solid for what the film is going for, and Cage and Javi in particular, really enjoyable and interesting. Solid character work. As for the comedy, it's alright. While not as funny as something like Clifford, the comedy of Unbearable Weight is pretty solid, with some funny lines, typical tropes of the action comedy genre, fun moments, and enjoyable absurdism. It's nothing amazing, but it's pretty cool comedy that combines with the character work to make a fun experience. Finally, let's talk about how the film treats Nicolas Cage. Unbearable Weight does a good job treating Cage with a lot of respect. The film doesn't mock or glorify Cage. Rather, it lets us see the struggles of being Nicolas Cage, balancing his work and family, and seeing this contrast with the explosive mobster plot is legit really interesting and clever. And the way that the film reflects on Cage's filmography is genuinely cool to see. It really makes this feel like a tribute to Nick Cage's awesomeness without feeling like glorification. In conclusion, The Unbearable Weight of Massive Talent is a really solid movie. The acting is great, Nick and Javi rule, the comedy's fun, it's an enjoyable love letter to the awesomeness that is Nick Cage. If you love Nicolas Cage, action comedies, or meta commentary, The Unbearable Weight of Massive Talent is a great film to check out. Pretty solid film about a pretty great actor.
Happy, happy Halloween, Halloween, Halloween. Happy, happy Halloween, silver shamrock. Happy, happy Halloween, Halloween, Halloween.
While I couldn't care less about the Halloween franchise as a whole, Halloween 3 Season of the Witch was a film that always fascinated me. And after watching it, yeah, this film is weird. But really good too. Like Morbius, Season of the Witch has a very interesting atmosphere to it, and is really good at suspense. You really feel engrossed in the world of this film, and want to know what happens next. However, unlike Morbius, the characters in Season of the Witch are actual characters. While none of H3's characters feel like the most in-depth or complicated characters in the world, they have enough personality and uniqueness to stick in the audience's mind and make them want to engage with the movie. Two characters that are especially of note are Dr. Dan Chalice and Connell Cochran. While Dan isn't the most morally great character, Tom Atkins does a good job in the role, especially in that iconic ending shot, and he's a pretty solid character to anchor the audience with. And as for Cochran, he's one of those villains who, early on, you can tell that he's going to be evil. But he's having so much fun and is such an enjoyable presence that I don't mind. And like with Bodies, 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 Season of the Witch is a very unique film. The premise of a cultish company making masks that kill kids through television broadcasting is a legit really interesting premise, and the way that the film comments on marketing, consumerism, and technology is very fascinating, and combines with the film's atmosphere to make Season of the Witch an incredibly unique film, especially compared to the rest of the Halloween franchise. The dialogue and 80s charm also really helps make Season of the Witch enjoyable. The dialogue has a very cool charm to it. feeling very unique and capturing the horror and strangeness of the film. And the 80s charm gives Season of the Witch a time capsule vibe, which really helps make the film great for a nostalgia dive. Finally, let's talk about the most iconic part of H3, the Silver Shamrock jingle. Even if you've never seen this movie, you know about the iconic and awesome Silver Shamrock jingle, made for the fictional company in the film. This jingle rules. It's incredibly catchy, cheesy, fun, and unlike something like this,
Head on, apply directly to the forehead. Head on, apply directly to the forehead. Head on, apply directly to the forehead.
it never gets annoying. It's a perfect advertising jingle that's an iconic part of this great movie. While I wouldn't call Halloween 3 Season of the Witch a masterpiece, it is a pretty solid film. The plot is creative, the characters are cool, there's just so much 80s charm. The Silver Shamrock jingle is cool, and there's just so much crazy insanity. If you like weird horror films and are looking for a new Halloween classic, give Season of the Witch a try. A great film that makes me curious of what the Halloween franchise could have been. And that's it. Comment your thoughts on these movies and shows and what stuff you watched, and tune in for more content coming soon. Till then, this is Jeremy, and I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.
And we live in an actual nightmare!